Hello and a very good afternoon to all of those joining me live on the Facebook page of News 9. I'm Neha. Now, in a landmark move, the central government amended several laws, which opened the way for people outside Jammu and Kashmir to buy land in the Union Territory. The central government announced land laws for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and did away with the protection that was given to permanent residents. The central government left out the phrase quote-unquote permanent residents of the state from Section 17 of the Jammu and Kashmir Development Act. Now, before the revocation of Article 370, do remember that no one from outside Jammu and Kashmir was allowed to buy any property in the region. Now, this act, however, does not include agricultural land. According to, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Union, Territory of Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization, Adaptation of Central Laws, Third Order 2020 shall come into force with immediate effect and will encourage development in the UT of Jammu and Kashmir, Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. And as per the Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor, the agricultural land has been reserved for farmers. The rules mention that the agricultural land can be transferred, but only after government's approval. Now, according to the rules, quote unquote, no sale, gift, exchange or mortgage of any land will be valid in favor of a person who is not an agriculturalist unless the government or an officer authorized by it in this behalf may grant permission for the same. Now, of course, moving on, which means that land can be gifted once the permission is granted. The rule also states that in order for an area to be declared as strategic within a local area, an officer no lesser than the rank of Corps Commander will have to give, a written request. It says, and I read, the rule says this area will have to be declared and the government may satisfy itself about the reasons cited for declaring the area as a strategic area and will have such area notified accordingly with such conditions as may be required. Now, to understand more about this in depth, of course, there are many things that are attached to it. Joining me over the phone line is Mr. Anil Anand, who's a senior journalist. Many thanks, Mr. Anil, first of all, for taking out some time and speaking to us. Mr. Anand, I'd like you to break it down for us. What are these land reform acts and how will it change the demography of Jammu and Kashmir? And also, most importantly, will you call it a step in the right direction?
Your intro was self-explanatory and quite a detailed one. You explained the technicalities of the order in some manner. Let me get back to from where you left. First of all, yes, the gates of Jammu and Kashmir have been thrown wide open for people of rest of the country to come and buy land, which was earlier on prohibited. Earlier on, only those people who were permanent residents of the states or who possessed what we used to have was a permanent resident certificate. Only those persons could buy land or make land transactions. Now, by this order, the Home Ministry has thrown it wide open for anyone to come and buy the land for commercial and residential purposes. Yes, you rightly said, on the agricultural land there are certain restrictions, but then the government has taken the power in their own hand. If the government gives a clearance, gives a no objection certificate, the agricultural lands can be transferred.
Actually, Mr. Anand, I was coming to that. Why does this act not include the sale of agricultural land? Any specific reason for that?
See, there is a social concern about all these acts. Let me tell you, this Article 370 is now redundant, and all these Permanent Resident Certificate Act or whatever it is, they were in place for 70 long years. There were different views on this, but there was an emotional cord also, and there was a sense of protection also given by these laws. Rightly or wrongly, I'm not going into the debate. That is a different, separate debate altogether. So that is why agricultural land, there was a growing feeling that agricultural lands may be purchased lock, stock and barrel and may be used for industrial purposes, for construction purposes. So thereby it would lead to depletion in the quantum of agricultural land, and the agriculture itself would be hit very hard. As it is, there is a lot of movement everywhere in the country, from rural to the urban areas. People are selling their lands and coming to the urban areas where they think life is easy. It is easy to live than compared to the rural areas. So these could be the reasons that why agricultural land, and then the feeling to strengthen the agriculture field. So these could be the reasons that there are certain restrictions on the sale of direct sale of the agricultural land. But
Right.
there are as you have stated, it's not that the agricultural lands would not be sold or can't be sold. So that is one thing. The Government of India, the Union Home Ministry has issued two different separate orders. The first order, it states that anyone can now purchase land in J&K for commercial and residential purposes or any other purposes. The government on recommendation of, as you very rightly said, there were areas, since Jammu and Kashmir is a border area, it was a border state, now it is a border union territory, and a very strategic one. We have two hostile neighbors in our neighborhood,
True.
Pakistan and China. So there's large army establishment out here. So naturally, when you have a large army establishment, they would need land for their purposes only, for strategic purposes only, and even for their other purposes also. So there have been instances and complaints over the years, over the decades, that particularly in the Kashmir Valley, due to the prevailing circumstances out there, people used to oppose, or certain forces used to oppose acquisition of land by the army. So I think in some manner, it is the right move that the army has been permitted to acquire land for strategic purposes and for the training purposes. But of course, with certain conditions again.
Right.
But one hopes that this doesn't antagonize people and these powers are not misused.
Right.
So
Mr. Anand, I'm sorry to interfere. My next question to you would be, Centre has cleared the new Land Act for Jammu and Kashmir, in which they've gotten rid of the permanent resident, allowing every Indian to buy property in Jammu and Kashmir, like you rightly mentioned. But the question is, what is the way ahead for Jammu and Kashmir since Reform Act has been put in place, and who can really buy the land and what are the conditions?
See, but now it's very clear. Anybody can buy a land. Earlier on, as you said, there was a binding. Only permanent residents can take place. Now, so far as the permanent resident certificate is concerned, or it has been replaced now by a new domicile certificate, there's a total confusion prevailing in Jammu and Kashmir. Government, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Okay.
Now, earlier on, after the partial abrogation of Article 370 and annulment of Article 335A, the permanent resident certificate thing became redundant. And in that place, to assuage the feelings of the people, the government said, okay, we will give you a new domicile certificate act. As we were now in the process of acquiring new domicile certificate here in the state, and there are difficult areas also, the implementation has many questions, marks raised over it. The new thing has come. Now, if I am getting an impression, unless and until I read the final print, and it is clarified, where does the new domicile certificate now stand? Whether it is needed or not. Whether it is, if everything is open now for the people of India, all outside the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, then why this huge exercise of issuing the domicile certificate, which has created a lot of trouble for the people? So I don't understand now whether the permanent resident certificate is needed at all or not.
Well, which brings me to my last question, Mr. Anand. Modi government says that through this Land Reform Act, many industries will be allowed to purchase land and, set up industries which will eventually provide jobs to Kashmiris or, people of Jammu and Kashmir. But there have been many voices against it. Your thoughts on that?
See, yes, it's a very positive statement made by the Government of India, by the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and it's a welcome statement. Only time will tell. How does it unfold? First and foremost, Jammu and Kashmir is a hilly state. It's a difficult terrain. There are not huge tracts of land where you can bring in industries, lock, stock and barrel, and acres of land you can allot to them. So it has to be seen what industries come, or only those who want to buy land, they show interest in J&K. Whether they are really interested in setting up the industry. Although government has taken a very important step in that direction also. They have set up an industrial development corporation also under these new orders, which will monitor the industrial development in the area. Unless and until there are strict laws, there are bindings on those who buy land that they have to set up industry, they have to make production, and then certain safeguards must be given to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, even if the industries are set up, like the employment. What would be the share of the local youth and the local experts in those industrial jobs, and so on and so forth. So these are the gray areas which the government, maybe these things are there in the final print, but government should come out with subsequent explanations on this so that the feelings of the people are assuaged. Right now, there's a mixed feeling. There's a feeling that it's a good move. Yes, it's a good move, but there's also a feeling that this would take away the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Like in Jammu, there's a huge demand for political empowerment of the area, which has been playing a second fiddle to the leadership of Kashmir, the Kashmiri politics. So these areas are still grey areas. Keeping in view these concerns, the government of India must come out with subsequent explanations to assuage the feelings of the people of Jammu and Kashmir and to give them a clear direction and explanation as to what do they entail and how far these orders would go to satisfy their demands and needs.
All right. All right. Many thanks, Mr. Anand, for joining us with all of those important insights. Well, there seems to be a divided opinion, over the Land Reform Act. Many are saying, some say that this will open up endless opportunities for the people of the valley, while some say it's a draconian decision taken by the central government. Let us know what you think in the comments section. Many thanks for watching. If at all you like this video, do not forget to subscribe News 9 Digital.